Welcome to the TriStar Podcast, where martial arts meets family, faith, and personal growth. Join Professor Brummett and Professor Chris Bean as they share stories from the mat, lessons from life, and tools to help you and your family live like black belts on and off the mat. It's time to train the body, sharpen the mind, and strengthen the spirit right here on the TriStar Podcast. Hello, welcome back to the TriStar Podcast. Mr. Brummett here, and today, we're going to be talking about what we're calling set in order. So what I mean by that is building a home that really helps kids thrive. And here's the big question. What are you, as a parent, what are you teaching your children at home without even realizing it? And because I think we're always teaching things, always, even when we don't realize it. And what I don't mean is the big sit down talks. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean the little stuff, the tone, the way you feel, the way that you handle stress, the way that you handle conflict at home, the way that you handle maybe even screens as well. So some of you are listening right now and you're thinking, I'm trying my best. Why does it always feel like I'm losing? And if that's you, I want you to take a breath, sit back and relax, because this episode isn't about shame. It's really about clarity. So if if you've ever said, why won't my kids listen to me, right? Why is everything a battle? Why does it feel like my house is even chaotic? Then this episode really is for you.
And listen, hey, we're going to keep this as practical as we possibly can. This isn't just about parenting. It's about leadership. It's about discipleship. It's about building the kind of environment where, you are building those things. They're just part of the natural environment. You walk away today, hopefully with a simple framework that you can use this week, not some big 47-step plan, but something you can use today, not a total home makeover. Today, really, we're going to focus in on one verse, one key word, and then we're going to give you a way to translate that into your own life, your own parenting. And listen, just so you know, if you're listening to this and you already feel a little convicted, that's normal. But that conviction isn't condemnation. It's an invitation for us to grow.
And really, we've been, talking a lot lately in our past podcasts and such about identity and environment. And I think this is a perfect crossover because people want willpower. We want discipline. We want our kids to just do the right thing at the right time. But if the environment is set up for distraction, chaos, inconsistency, then we're fighting an uphill battle. And as parents, we're not just managing behavior, but we're shaping culture, and a culture in the home. And so let's put it into TriStar terms. If the studio had no rules, right? If the studio had no rules, no structure, no expectations, and no follow through, it would be, it wouldn't be loving, not at all. It would be confusing, it'd be chaotic, and kids wouldn't thrive. And home, I believe, is the same thing. So if if sometimes we don't realize it, that we're building a home or an environment that rewards things. And if we're not careful, we're rewarding the wrong things. So if whining works, well, whining becomes that skill that they're going to default to. If stalling works, well, stalling becomes that strategy that they're going to use. If arguing works, well, arguing is going to become a habit that they're going to continue to do. And it's not because the kids are evil. No, it's because they're actually smart.
And if you think about this, that culture is either training your kids towards, let's say, responsibility, or they're training them towards, entitlement, towards self-control, or towards impulse, towards respect, or towards consistent negotiation. And listen, I don't think any of us want to raise negotiators, especially not in the wrong way. So today we're going to talk about how we can set up the home and be in order, not to create a museum, but to create, let's say, a training ground. And to be clear, order doesn't mean that you are cold. It means that you are clear, right? Not cold, but clear. Also, on top of that, order doesn't mean that your home gets quieter overnight. It means your home gets steadier, but it's going to take time to do that.
Yeah, and let's, anchor this biblically as well. So there's a verse that gets quoted a lot when people talk about leadership in the church, and it is also, for church, but I think it's also relevant for leadership in the home as well. And so if we take a look at 1 Timothy 3 verse 4, it says one, I'm trying to remember it now that I'm under the gun. One that ruleth well his house, having his children in subjugation with all gravity. Now, that phrase ruleth well in the house, that's not being a dictator. So I don't want us to take this the wrong way. It's not being a dictator. It's about being present. It's about being consistent, I believe, and it's also about being willing to lead. And here's the wild thing: if parents don't lead, and parents, I want you to hear this: if parents don't lead, something else will. The screens will, their friends will, and even the culture. And your kids, well, they're still going to be trained, but it's not going to be by you. And that's not a guilt statement. So please don't take it that way. But it really is a reality statement. And here's the part that I want all parents to hear. Leadership isn't control. Leadership really is responsibility. And if you're responsible for something, then you're going to have to shape it. So I guess another way of saying this would be, if you don't set the tone, your child will. Let me say that again. If you don't set the tone, your child will. So if you don't set the schedule, the world's going to set it. If you don't set boundaries, something else is going to set that. So I think if you then spend your whole week in that world, then you're reacting to what's happening rather than leading what gets to happen.
I want to underline something there. When Scripture talks about leadership in the home, it's not trying to crush parents with pressure. Really, what I think it's doing is it's showing us that the home is one of God's primary training environments. And leadership in the home is a form of love, because love doesn't feel, love guides, love protects, love sets boundaries. And the verse says, children in subjugation with all gravity. That's where we want to pull one key word, right? Listen, let's also talk about that note, gravity there. There's some seriousness, not harshness, but gravity to this situation. It's the idea that what happens in the home matters. It's weighty, it's important. So if you've been treating the home like it's just you're in survival mode, this is your reminder that also you have some way to change that, right? And parents, you can lead what won't take you, and parents, you can't lead if you can't be taken seriously. That doesn't mean that you'll never laugh. That doesn't mean that what it means is you don't outsource the most important training environment that your child has, right? You want to be in control of that, be in control of that weighty, the gravity of that situation for your kids' benefit.
Yeah. And then look, if you outsource that, you don't know who you're outsourcing it to, right? And what kind of set this whole idea for this podcast was a study that I had done with a group of men. I get together with them on weekday mornings through Zoom, and we do a study together. And one of the studies had this Greek word called, I'm gonna mess it up, but it's hupotasso, I think is how you pronounce it. So Hupotasso, hupotasso. And the idea behind hupotasso is the words subjugation, and the simple meaning of that is to set into order or to arrange under. And I thought that was pretty neat. That applies to what we do as parents. It's to actually put things in the proper place. And parents, it's not just you're making your kids obey. Although we want kids that obey, but it's bigger than that. It's really to set the home in order. To set that clarity, that rhythm, and even the expectations. Because when boundaries are unclear clear, kids are going to push harder. I mean, they're going to push hard anyhow, but they're going to push harder when boundaries are unclear. So, and that's when parents get more reactive. And everybody gets tired of having to do that. And so when we think about this, and we think about that hupotasso, the subjugation, putting things in order, that actually means, if we don't do that, we have an environmental problem. We didn't set it in order. And so the simple thing is to ask yourself the question: does your child know what the expectations is before the moment happens? Meaning, if they do something, do they know what the expectations are? And if the answer is not really, that's where order needs to start. And so the other question would be, how do I follow through as a parent with something that I say? Because if we don't follow through, then we're teaching that our words don't matter, and really, I'm not trying to condemn the parents, but that's really just the reality of that. That's just, and I want you to understand, again, no condemnation, it's just feedback.
Well, I really like the phrasing there, like set in order, because it reframes, I think, the whole conversation. This isn't about you becoming harsher. It's about you becoming, again, more clear. It's clarity versus that coldness that I talked about already. Order doesn't mean joy disappears. Order is a gift, because order produces peace, and peace is where the relationships, your relationship with your kids, are going to be.
Amen.
It's going to grow there. You're going to foster it in that peace. And I'll add this: kids don't feel safe when they're the ones who are in charge. Let me say that again, because I think that's important. Kids don't feel safe when they are the ones that are in charge. They might act like that's what they want, but deep down, they know that you're the adult and that you need to have that kind of role. So when you set things in order, you're not taking something away from them. What you're really doing is you're giving them stability. And stability is one of the greatest gifts that you can give your child. Think about the messy versus chaotic, or resetting the atmosphere, right? That, I think, is the, well, I'll let you talk about that, because I think you have it, you nail it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And maybe say it this way, is the fact that there's a difference between, like you said, messy and chaotic. So messy is normal. We all have messy lives, and there's times when even our house is a mess, because obviously we have kids. And so life is busy, but chaotic is usually is usually a leadership vacuum, or inconsistent systems, if you will. And if your home feels chaotic, it's you're not a bad parent. You just might need a better framework so that it's not chaotic. And sometimes one of the most, spiritual routines that you can do is create that rhythm in your house, whether it's, your prayer time with your family, the bedtime routines. And of course, you could have routines inside of routines, or habits inside of routines, but, maybe a morning routine, the phone down time, the family dinner rhythm, because these rhythms actually, I think, reduce friction, because they make things normal. That's why it's so important when, these big things happen in our lives, that we try to create and keep those consistencies. And so these rhythms help, like I said, reduce that friction. And friction is where we lose our patience, right? How many times have you had in your life with your kids where you were like, I'm about ready, and that was that friction that really, so if you're thinking about snapping, you're not an angry person. All right. I want to give you some space there, some grace there, to understand that you're not an angry person. Maybe you're just tired. Maybe you're living this high friction environment. And what you could do is, if you create that order, well, that's going to reduce the friction.
Let me rephrase this for you. Maybe I think it would be helpful. If you think about order and you think, oh, that's going to put you in a box, and then you have to conform. Let's think about it, because sometimes that's a pushback that people give. I think one way to think about this is, almost everybody has the fear of the unknown, right? Fear of not knowing what's going to happen next, or how to handle this situation when it arises. The order, these rhythms that we're talking about, gives you a plan of action for how to go throughout your day. Now, it isn't you turning off your brain and just relying on that. Those systems, those rhythms, those processes for you and your family are there so that you can be more connected to what's going on in that moment and not worrying about what's going to happen next or this thing or whatever, because you have a system, there's an order, there's a rhythm to how those things work. And listen, hey, if you're listening to this and you feel tired already, I want you to hear this, okay? You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to become perfect. It would be impossible for us to do that anyways, but you don't have to create a home that looks like it's, a Pinterest board or belongs on the internet or whatever. All you need to do is choose one area, start setting an order, start setting a fallback routine. That way you don't have to think about it in the moment. You're not in that fear of the unknown because that system is already there. Those small shifts will create a big movement. And listen, parents, it's okay. Parents, it is okay if you have to reset. Right? Resetting isn't failure. Resetting is leadership. One practical idea, maybe we'll call this the reset meeting that you could do with your kids. Not a lecture, but a reset. Something like, hey, our home hasn't felt peaceful lately. I'm sure you have felt it as well. We're going to try a few things. We're going to try to change some things to see if we can have it feel better. That is leadership. And that is something that we talk about at TriStar all of the time.
Well, and if you think about it too, we kind of, and again, a lot of our podcasts overlap, but one of our very first few podcasts, and I don't remember which one it was, but we gave the listeners some practical things to be able to put into action. So meaning looking at different systems in their house. And I believe we talked about having a meeting, right, where they could, the kids could have input and say, hey, how do we want to handle this in the future? Like, how do we, and then get the buy-in. Am I recalling that correctly?
Absolutely, you are. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And that's kind of what you're bringing up now. So if you don't feel peaceful, get together and do that. And also, let's connect this to TriStar. So in the studio, right, we don't build character by having one big talk. We build it by reps, right? Repetition, consistency, small connections with your children, small wins over time. I've always believed that, from white to black belt, you got 4.5 years to shape this individual. And so, confidence doesn't necessarily come from competence, but it comes from, creating the space to have practice and then to do those reps and then a small correction and then do those reps and then another small correction and filling in the gaps with the praises that go along with it. Because, listen, if you think about this, your kids, when they bow and they say, yes, sir, when they stand still, when they learn how to wait and take their turn, when they help their teammate, when they're encouraging one another, that's not a random thing. That's training. And your home is the same. It's not any different. And when, our home is really that, I think that's where character can get the most reps, because you're with your child every single day. And let me give you a couple examples. If your child learns, when I whine, I get my way, that's a rep. If they learn that when I'm calm, I get heard, that's a rep too. And if they learn that when I do my responsibilities, I earn privileges, you see, that's a rep as well. So training in the home they're going to be trained one way or another. The question is, how do you want them to be trained? And parents, you already know that, that we do this in the martial arts. We give them a task, we train them, and then we talk about whether it was up to where it needs to be or what needs to be worked on. We praise them. We give them the practice that they need. And so the question is, and we give them the feedback as well. So the question is, what is your home practicing? What does that look like?
Well, I think that's why this matters so much, because if the home environment is training distraction or disrespect or consistent negotiation, if that's the default, that's not the greatest outcome that we want. We want that home environment to be built into something that is training responsibility, respect, follow through. That is what we want the default to be. And when that happens, kids are going to absorb patterns, good or bad. They're going to absorb those patterns. They notice how mornings feel. They notice how conflict gets handled. They notice how the adults the parents, you, us, will
Yes.
respond to those stressful situations. We try to hide it, but they're there. They're going to see those things. They get the feeling for those. The home is always teaching. And if you, again, you don't have to be perfect for your home to teach something good. You have to be intentional. And intentional doesn't mean intense. It just means consistent. You want to be consistent in your approach to those things.
Yeah, and look, we talked about we're going to give some practical strategies here, if you will, or systems. And I think one clear system is, or one easy system is authority, is clear authority. So kids really need to know who actually leads the home, not because you yourself are in a power struggle or you're power hungry with them, but it's because you're actually the one that's responsible for them, and responsibility requires authority. So if you are the one that is responsible, you should have to take the authority. And I think here's a phrase that kind of helps. And you say this to your kid, look, I love you too much to let you run the house. And look, that's not mean, it's loving. I mean, you just told them you love them, and it is. And because, like you had brought up before, kids don't really want to, actually be the adult. What they want is they want safety, they want clarity. I heard this phrase a long time ago, and I think it applies to this: clear is kind. Clear is kind. And so, clear authority doesn't mean yelling. It doesn't mean negotiating every single boundary, right? Because you don't have to when you have clear authority. You can explain and you can emphasize, but you do not surrender your leadership. And so one practical tip is kind of decide, if you will, what is, like ahead of time, what is a time that negotiation is okay and what is not okay. So like, some non-negotiables really is bedtime a non-negotiable. Yeah, maybe at certain ages, but once they start to get older, that might be a different thing. Respect, that's not negotiable. Screen time, I don't think that's a negotiating thing, right? Truthfulness, parents, do you think that that's a thing that you should negotiate? No, that is something that you need to be consistent on.
And listen, hey, I'd add this: clarity up front prevents chaos later on. A lot of these battles that we face as parents are really surprise expectations, because the kids don't know what the rule was, or the rule changed depending on your mood. So one practical step that we can all have before the rule changes in the moment: here's what I expected. Here's what happens if we do it. Here's what happens if we don't do it. That's loving leadership. And if you're thinking, but my kid is going to push back, yes, because they're testing. They're testing whether that line is drawn in the sand or if that line is drawn in permanent marker, right? Where is it? How firm is that line? They're testing, yes. So they want to know whether you actually mean what you say. And that is how they do it. They push back. And we have to, as the parent, we have to be able to say, yeah, that's the line. There's no pushing, there's no moving. You can't wipe it away. It's on the ground. It's there. We can't pass it.
Yeah. And really, I mean, consistency answers the question in their mind, right? And so the second system, if you will, is daily responsibilities. And so responsibilities are, I think, character reps. So do you do everything for your kids? Because if you do, you're really training them to be helpless or to look for somebody else to do something for them. So you're training in maybe even entitlement as well. And if you ever wondered why they don't appreciate anything, well, there you go. So the key is, though, obviously keep it age appropriate, keep it simple. Little kids, it's, put the shoes away, hang the backpack up, pick up your toys. Slightly older kids, it's make the bed, put away the laundry, do the dishes, take out the trash, those type of things. Maybe even help with dinner, feed the pets, wipe down the counters, clean the bathrooms, whatever it is. And listen, here's the key. Those things, that isn't punishment. Not at all. It's preparation. Now, what you're doing is you're preparing them for life. And I can tell you on the back end, having adult parents, they will appreciate the fact that you actually prepared them for those things. And they will have peers that they will look at and go, really? You don't know how to cook, or you don't know how to clean? Believe me, because I'm on the other end of it. All right. So, and also parents, don't underestimate how much confidence this is going to give your kid and how useful it will be. And when a child, actually makes a contribution, they feel capable. And that really, I think, is character.
And parents, if you're thinking, my kid will fight me on that, you're probably right. Because anything new is going to feel uncomfortable, whether you're a kid or an adult, it's going to feel uncomfortable. But that discomfort isn't danger. Discomfort often is growth, right? We talk about that frequently on here. And if you can stay calm, if you can hold the line, you're not trying to win the argument. You're trying to build whatever that thing is into a habit. One tip is to start with one responsibility and do it for 7 days. Don't add 5 new rules all at one time. Start with one and then build from there.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of, when you talked about James Clear's book, what's it called?
Atomic Habits.
Yeah, Atomic Habits. It's just, one little small improvement makes a huge difference over time. And not to rehash that book, but if you have not read that book, parents, I would say it's a good book to read. Now, system number 3 is rewards and consequences. Consequences aren't cruelty. Let me say that again. Consequences aren't cruelty. Consequences are reality. Reality is a teacher, and sometimes reality is the best teacher. And so you can teach reality in your home, I think, with love, because they don't have to be separate. Rewards matter too. So be understanding that, because rewards, I think, really show your child what the value is, or what their value is to whatever's happening in the house. And so understand, though, that you're not bribing, you're not, reinforcing these things with rewards. Like, if you do this, I'm going to give you X, Y, and Z. That's not what I'm talking about. But what I am talking about is explain the expectations before the moment, like you had talked about before, but teach it when you're calm, and then follow you reward, because behavior that's rewarded will be repeated. And so when you do that, you're going to just reinforce those good behaviors. But if you're unclear, the problem is unclear is going to create this anxiety in your child. And there is going to be this division of them not understanding, what's going on between the rewards and the consequences.
And I'll say this too, consequences don't have to be dramatic. Sometimes it's simple. You don't have to, you didn't do your responsibility. So we're going to pause the fun until it's over. Or maybe another way would be, we're not moving on to screens until the room is picked up. Again, hold the line. That's not anger. Again, it's order. That's that hapatasso that we talked about. Setting things in order, setting things in their proper place. And rewards can be simple too. Praise, extra time with you, a privilege, maybe something like, thank you for doing that without being asked. That stuff really lands. It lands with kids and it lands with adults too.
Well, it does. And if you think about it, I mean, there's been studies that have been done, even with and bringing into adults to kind of reinforce what you're talking about. The fact that one of the biggest problems adults have with their job is not hearing the praise for what they're doing. So even as adults, we're little kids, right?
Yes.
So let's bring it back to the heart. Okay, the home is I believe the home is always teaching. We have to understand, though, too, that we have to handle stress in an appropriate way, because that's always teaching. How we talk to our spouse is always teaching. How we apologize or not always teaches. How we forgive or not always teaches. And your example really is the loudest lesson for the kids. And parents, again, you don't have to be perfect because nobody is only Jesus was perfect. But what we do have to do is we have to be real. Repent quickly, repair quickly. That's, I think, discipleship. So we always like to leave with some sort of challenge in most of our podcasts. And so here's the challenge this week, kind of like what Professor Bean had talked about. Pick one of these things for yourself. And whether it's the morning routine, bedtime routine, setting boundaries, like whatever it is, family dinner rhythm, like screen time, whatever it is, pick one of those, focus on this week, right? Set it in order, in the order that you want for your house to have. And then when you do that and you have that, then you can move on to the next one. Mr. Bean, is there anything that you want to add before we kind of close out today?
Yeah, again, as we went through this conversation today, a gentle reminder that order does not confine you inside of a box. That, again, is oftentimes what people think is order. Oh, now I have to do it this way. Now I have to do it this way. Allow that order to be the fallback so that there is no question about how to do bedtime routine. There's no question about how to do the morning routine. There's no question about how much screen time somebody's get. You have that there as the opportunity to have a fallback. So you don't have to be fearful of the unknown. There's no question marks on it. You know what it is. Hold the line, make it firm, and then continue on from there.
Yeah, I like you say hold the line. Yeah, sometimes that's hard, parents, but we get. So let's close in prayer, if you would. Father, we thank you for the opportunity, the honor to be parents. And Lord, it's not easy all the time, but you've asked us to set things in order, to set our house in order, that hupotasso. And Lord, help us to do it with love and patience and calmness, but also do it with order that has that we are consistent with, but has the boundaries that are healthy for our kids as well. And we thank you for that in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Hey, and listen, listeners, next week we got an awesome episode planned for you. So make sure you come back for that one. Thanks for joining the TriStar podcast, where black belts begin at home. Connect with our community by visiting tristarkarate.com. Follow us on social media and share this episode with a family who's ready to grow stronger together. Until next time, stay focused, stay faithful, and keep training like a champion.